We should all have boundaries to protect ourselves from things like burnout, being taken advantage of, and a plethora of other different things. Hi, my name is Ariel, aka Dr. A. I'm a licensed professional counselor and I specialize in trauma, depression, and anxiety. So, like I said, we should all have boundaries, but ask yourself, what type of boundaries do you have and why do you have them? Do they come from a good place or a hurt place? Are they healthy or are they unhealthy? Unhealthy or inappropriate boundaries can come from a lot of different things, such as malice, being jaded, in order to control, in order to feel superior, to hold strength over somebody, to avoid accountability, or to push people away, or self sabotage. Just so we're clear, an unhealthy boundary is when you're putting a boundary on somebody else. So, what you think you're doing is setting a boundary, but what you're really doing is setting an unrealistic expectation for somebody else based on a place of hurt or a reason why you're trying to put a boundary on somebody else versus yourself. If you're putting a boundary on somebody else and it's coming from a place of hurt, it's so that you don't feel that feeling again. So you see it's coming from a place of not positive, but for somebody else because of somebody else or something else that happened before, but not this person in front of you. A good way to look at this as well is ask yourself if your boundaries are the same across all areas of your life, or if they change in different areas. So, with relationships, with siblings, with work, with partners, with kids, friends, family, all of the sorts. And if they all look a little bit different, it's probably because something has happened in one of those areas to make you change those boundaries. So ask yourself, they're changed because of what reason? Is it appropriate or is it not? Okay, so we're talking about all these unhealthy boundaries and where they may come from, but where do healthy boundaries come from? Healthy boundaries come from awareness of ourselves, from realistic balance that we have in our life or that we want in our life. Healthy boundaries come from encouragement and autonomy. Healthy boundaries come from learning and exploring what it is that works for us. It also comes from skills, being able to build that skill. Building a healthy boundary is a skill. And compromise. Healthy boundaries come from compromise. If we come from an unhealthy place of boundaries, maybe we go from one extreme to the other. The other side of that is a compromise of, you know what, I recognize that that may be on the extreme side. How can I compromise that where I still feel okay? So, what does that look like? So, that's going to look like I'm communicating what I need. I am aware that this is something that works for me. Can you do that? As opposed to, I'm putting this expectation or boundary that you have to do XYZ. No, I'm putting a boundary that I am comfortable with XYZ. You're able to communicate how you want to be approached and how you want to be treated versus forcing somebody to do so. With this, you've said exactly what you needed to say, and it's up to the other person to be able to either respect it or not respect it. If they respect it, great. If they don't respect it, now you get to decide what you do with that information and how you move forward with those people in your life. You can walk away or distance yourself versus getting upset and frustrated and trying to force that person through anger or aggression to stick with your boundary. If they wanted to, they would. Sometimes people need maybe one time to have that conversation again because it's a skill that they haven't learned themselves. But when it's blatant disrespect, don't waste your time becoming unregulated and upset and angry and trying to force them into following the boundary that you have. You have a healthy boundary. They chose not to accept it. Move on. So, just an example of both a healthy communication for a boundary and an unhealthy communication for a boundary, starting with the healthy side, would look like this. I don't tolerate being treated like this as I find it demeaning. When someone does this to me, it makes me feel heard, and I really appreciate that. It's important to remember that it's always really valuable to have a boundary conversation at the early stages of relationship building. And this isn't just intimate relationships, this is relationships in general. It's really important to establish those in the beginning, because after a while you get comfortable to what that dynamic is. And if that's not something that you feel like is a good dynamic because somebody's crossing boundaries and it hasn't been talked about, it's really difficult to go back to trying to figure that out and start over again. So remember to have these conversations at the beginning. Moving on to the unhealthy examples of boundaries. Saying things such as, you need to text me every hour. You need to tell me everywhere you go. Or better yet, just ask. Ask me first. Also saying things like, you can't have these types of friends because that didn't work for me before in my previous relationships. Or you can't have these types of friends because they kind of trigger this for me. Or even things like, you have to apologize even if you don't mean it just so it will make me feel better. Do you see the difference with the realistic, appropriate, and the unhealthy, inappropriate boundaries? Do you find yourself doing any of these things on either side? Is there any type of communication that you would want to change for your boundaries after watching this video? I'd really like to hear from you, so leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, thank you for having these therapy conversations with me. I look forward to the one next week. Bye.